Asylum, the final adventure in the Shackled City adventure path, which I'll note is also the 12th official adventure in this adventure path. This adventure came out of Dungeon Magazine 116. It is made for characters of level, what the adventure says, 13 to 20. But in the adventure, you'll note, if you're running it in third edition, it states that you should be level 19. Now, I ran this adventure in 5th edition with characters around levels 15 to 16. So any range around level 15 and higher will probably be sufficient, especially if you have a very large group of player characters like I did. My group was about 6 players in total for the adventure. If you only have 4, run it with characters that are like level 19, maybe even level 20 in that case. Now, this is a 25-page adventure, which takes place almost entirely in the Outer Plains and mostly in Carceri. And as you see by the title here, it is an Outer Plains Carceri adventure and dungeon crawl. Now, I'll skim up a little bit here so you can see this image here of these different creatures. Some of them are demodans, others are, unfortunate souls, other types of fiends. This might be a flesh golem, for example. As you're going into the adventure here in the beginning here, you get the standard adventure background, you get more images of unfortunate souls. This adventure deals with venturing into Carceri specifically, by the way, to reach a location called Skullrot, which is essentially a prison slash asylum for damned souls in Carceri, or which is similar to Tartarus from Greek myths. And to get there, player characters are going to want to go to the top of the tower, then to try to destroy Adimarchus, the demon prince of madness who's imprisoned there and whose influence has more or less caused all the events in the entire Shackled City campaign, although not directly. Now, the adventure begins with an optional segment. I didn't use this in my adventure where the former Lord Mayor of Cauldron, Orbius Valantru, the Beholder, comes back. Essentially, he respawns in the prison, or not the prison plane, but in Octipitus, of which one of the player characters is likely currently the Lord of. And when he respawns there, because he apparently has a background from that area, he somehow becomes the Lord Mayor, or not the Lord Mayor, but he becomes the new Lord of Activitas, taking it away from one of the player characters. Now, the DM could use this segment, but I don't feel like it's really that important for the whole adventure. It kind of gives a reason to go back to Activitas because it doesn't really come into play in any other part of the campaign, and it allows the player characters to refight Valantru. I think this segment works fairly well if you're running this as a standalone high-level adventure, especially if you want to use the all the different tests and all that, or you want to use the adventure in Activitas with this adventure, but at fairly high level, with Valantru being the main boss. If you're simply running this as part of the ongoing series, I don't think it's entirely necessary. But if you really want to have Valantru come back as a reoccurring villain, and this is how he comes back, it works. It kind of works. Again, I didn't use this for my adventure. I just thought it was redundant, but it's up to you. As you're going into the adventure, the player characters are visited by a sort of fallen angel by the name of Nidrama. I believe she does appear in an earlier adventure, and she would basically be an ally venturing into Carceri with the player characters. She's also a great lead to kind of get them motivated and to explain that if they don't deal with Adimarchus, his influence will continue, and more or less another cult will rise in the place of the cage rights eventually. Now, player characters could inevitably kill Adimarchus at some point in this adventure, and they likely will. But if they do defeat him, he may not be gone forever. It might be one of those things where he restores himself in 100 years or something like that for the next group of adventurers to fight and destroy him, or something similar like that. but she's effectively a diva. If you're running in third edition, obviously you can just use her stats here. If you're running in fifth edition, you could use any sort of angel or diva, depending on how powerful you want her to be and what level the group is. She's meant to be just essentially additional help when they go into Carceri. And again, kind of a quest giver at this point, like the motivator. I don't think she's 100% necessary to give them extra help if they have a very large group and if they're closer to 20th level. I didn't use her for my adventure. I used a different lead that led the same direction, but nonetheless, you could use her if you want, and she's helpful. Now, when the player characters actually get to Carceri, they're probably going to have to teleport, not teleport there, they're going to have to plane shift there. They might have an amulet of the planes or something similar, or they might just somehow be shunted there, but more likely they'll be plane shifted. The adventure does give you some random encounters that are set up, at least in third edition, that you can use. Most of these are easy to transfer because most of these creatures, like Shators and Calibors and Farastus, are in fifth edition. In fact, there's actually two different versions of each of them. But there are some other creatures that might prove difficult to transfer, like this half celestial human paladin. I mean, he could be in a Samar paladin that could be, someone they free and get some extra help from if they really need the help. They encounter this Demo Dam squad, for example. As you're going through some of these encounters, the demon troop encounter would be a very easy encounter to put into fifth edition. It's a very difficult encounter. Four Hezrus, six Varroks, and now Feshni is something that only a very high level D&D group should encounter. But if they are that level, it's a great, random encounter out in the middle of the wastes of Othis, or Othris, which is the name of the first level of Carceri. But you may note there are some other encounters here. The Stygian Marauders, for example. These are, a tiefling fighter rogues, or like 10 of them, or six of them, but they're like 12th level various tieflings. You could build these as cambions, for example, and they give them nightmares, and it would still work really well if you're running in fifth edition. As usual, beware of the magic items they have here. This is designed for third edition. In a lot of cases, in third edition, these adventures gave them tons of magic items, honestly, way too many. And the values of these items don't switch well with fifth edition. And you'll notice that if you run a lot of these adventures. There are also two location sites, which I think is very interesting. I didn't use these sites in my adventure, but I kind of wish I had because they're interesting. Our group teleported or plane shifted directly to the main tower of Skullrot, so I didn't need to use this stuff. But this is more if your player characters plane shift into the plane and then they have to find Skullrot. Now, note if they are looking for Skullrot once they're there and they don't know where it is, there are a lot of trapped souls in Carceri that are imprisoned. They might be good NPCs that could help the players, or the players could interrogate some various fiends, some of which will know how to get to Skullrot. It's probably a well-known location in Carceri, which would involve the player characters one way or another traveling. Now we have the Bastion of Lost Hope. There are no maps for these locations, by the way. There's this axe, magical weapon, Dementia. It's kind of interesting. But there's this location, there's another location. It's got some fiends there and stuff like that. As you go further in, you get this tower. This can be really confusing, and it wasn't my game. The main tower in the adventure is Skullrot. This is a separate tower. It's not Skullrot. It's actually this second location here, Harrowfell, which again has fiends in it, but has a Merilith and some Babaus and a couple of Hezrus in it. It's more like a smaller tower the player characters can get to. They could even maybe use it as a base if they clear out the demons and before they get to Skullrot. Now, if your player characters are going straight to Skullrot, you don't need to use this. But eventually, very likely, they will get to Skullrot. I'll note, by the way, I have brand new maps for this adventure that I made with Dungeon Draft of each level of this tower for Skullrot. It is the real meat and potatoes of the adventure. Everything else is just extra and some fluff that might be useful depending on how the campaign runs. Now, as you go here, you can see some of the maps here. These are decent. but they're not fantastic. The area around Skullrot should be kind of a swampy land as well. Some of the cage rights, by the way, if they survived, as it notes here, might have escaped here and are lingering here. In my campaign, one of the cage rights did escape. I forget what his first name was, but his last name was Lavelle. It was part of an ongoing story with one of my player characters who had the same last name. The players will inevitably come in through location one, but because it's a tower and the top of the tower is outside, the player characters could attempt just to fly to the top and fight the main enemies if they really want to. But the DM might want to put some issues in with doing that because it's a 200-foot tall tower. That's a possibility, but unless all your player characters have the ability to fly, that will be kind of problematic in this adventure. Or maybe you put something in where there's some sort of electric field near the top that these spikes give off, and anyone trying to fly up there is struck by lightning or some other effect to give them an incentive to go into the tower. Don't fully block them from going to the top, but put some consequences in if they want to skip to the end and just not do the whole adventure, which there are player characters who will try that because they want to get to the bottom line of the adventure for some reason. But if they go into the tower, which they probably will, they will fight a lot of Farastus, including this entry room where they fight 10 Farastus. This is a very difficult fight. It's number 2, I believe, right past this balcony entrance. Number 3, when they get in there, they fight this guy over to the right here. He is his name's Hexavog. He is a 6-armed advanced Celebar Demodan. He's kind of like more like a Shatar with more arms than anything else. I built a version of him at one point for this adventure where he was just kind of a unique version of a Celebar. I would consider doing that, just highly advanced the Celebors that you could find for 5th edition if you're running in that. Give them a lot more attacks with more arms, and it makes a very interesting foe. I'll note as well there are lots of dangling cages around this tower. It is a prison and asylum tower. There are likely, many skeletons and zombies, as they note here, just all over the place. Many of the chambers within the tower are just filled with prisoners. In fact, all these little chambers here, if you look around number sevens, they're all filled with prisoners, and there's multiple layers of this. The player characters could try to break these doors open and could attack the prisoners. A lot of the prisoners are going to be types of fiends. Some of them might be imprisoned former adventurers or nobles that have been trapped here for centuries. The DM could really do a lot with this because it's a major location in Carceri, and there could be some very interesting people locked into different chambers, but mostly it's going to be different types of fiends, and it could be devils, demons, demodans, it could be Yugoloths, it could be, some angelic creatures like, well, different types of divas. It could be and arboreal gardenals. Some of these creatures are presented in the adventure as to the random creatures they find in there. But there's a couple other rooms in the first level that should prove interesting as well. The Golem Lab, where they're making golems. For example, these advanced flesh golems. Unless you're running it at high level and you're running 5th edition, you can just run them as regular flesh golems. That's what I did. There is a Devourer in this adventure. The 3rd edition, they advanced it to higher level because they wanted this to be a 19th level adventure. It's only necessary if you are running it at that level or if you're running it as a purist in 3rd edition. As you're kind of going in, you get the, a bed chamber for this advanced Chasme demon. If you're running it in 5th, he could just be a Chasme. It works fine, trust me. And then you get the higher levels of the tower. This is levels 2 through 4, and they are very similar to each other. They're the same layout, and it's just the player characters going up into different areas. You have the 8 level and number 7 areas. It's just the different rooms. The version I made of the map have some differences depending on the levels. Each room is a little different, just to make them stand out a little bit. But the next, 2 through 4 levels, the player characters are just going to fight some stuff and head up to the top of the tower one by one. Although there are a couple of creatures here that they will specifically encounter, different fiends and all that. You also have a table here for possible creatures that are trapped here and imprisoned in the different rooms. It's not a lot of variety, but there should be some Slades, as I mentioned earlier, fallen Archons, a Hound Archon. Those aren't really in fifth edition, I don't believe, unless they recently put it in. But most of these things could easily be put in there. There's this Berserk Advanced Flesh Golem. You could do that or something with that. It would probably work. It gives you a little bit of variety of what's in these rooms, and it depends on your group as to whether or not they're going to break open those cells. If you're running this on Roll20, you might want to put some creatures in the cells just so the player characters can see what's in there, but it shouldn't be a situation where the player characters are just attacking from the outside of the cells to kill enemies that are in there who are helpless, because that's not a fair fight, and that shouldn't be worth any XP, at least in my opinion. But you might get players that might want to systematically break open the cells if they're really lawful good, and especially if they're power gamers, and want to fight every single monster in each cell or free every ally they can from them useful in each cell. Players might do that. My players released a number of Royal Guard Gnolls from different cells that came to their help, came to their rescue and helped them. And they fought a couple of things as well, but that gets a little redundant considering how tall this tower is and how many cells there are. I mean, there are literally 24 cells in this first level, level 2, and I mean, there are 4 levels of just these cells, effectively. Now, as the player characters are going up the tower, they fight this. Well, she's an Annis hag, and she says she's fiendish. Annis hags in 5th edition are already fiends, but she has 11 levels of barbarian. You could run it in 3rd edition like that, or if you're running in 5th, she could just be an Annis hag, and it's fine. It's not necessary to give her extra levels unless your player characters are extremely high level. Same with the fact that she has some other flesh golems with her. They could be more advanced and have more hit dice, be larger if you want, but it's not 100% necessary. And she has some special abilities because they built her to be a barbarian. Note all the magic items that she has on her. This wouldn't even work in 5th edition with this mithril breastplate. So you'd have to change these things around to make them a little different. And again, beware of giving them ridiculous magic items, even at this level. It will just completely unbalance your campaign. And they won't even matter at this point if you give them tons of very rare magic items. They probably won't find much use for them, and it's probably near the end of the campaign. This stuff isn't as useful as you would think, but a lot of these old adventures, they like to give away a lot of this stuff. By the way, I meant to do this earlier in the adventure. This is a Chris Perkins adventure. Now, the cartography, as usual, was done by Christopher West. I'll note this, by the way. And a lot of the illustrations were done by Attila Giordani and Eric Kim of Udon. Just going back and noting that as well. Now, as you go to the end of the adventure here, and you are more or less going further up, they do have this encounter here, and they get eventually to the top of the tower once they deal with sort of the lesser warden of the Annis Hag and all that. They get to the levels 5 through 8, which are going to be much smaller. The upper levels, you could see the 9 area. It's the same area, but each one of these stairways connects to one hallway. And this is a little confusing. If you note here, as they're going up here, each of these stairways goes up, but when you get to level 4, each stair will access only one hallway, and there's no other way in. So this stairway, this little brown part here, accesses this north hallway, and then this stair goes up to level 6, which will access only this hallway here, and then level 7 for them would be this hallway. It's very specific like that, and it can be kind of confusing. Now, the player character will be in this structure. There are cages outside dangling off the tower on all 4 levels of this area, and there could be various things in there: humanoids, undead, medium sized fiends. Most of these cells are going to be medium sized creatures that are trapped here. They don't all have to be full, there could be a few openings. The central area is a pit that drops all the way down to the bottom level. As you look here, there's a pit here as well. It drops all the way down to the floor level, which is level 3. So theoretically, the player characters could just fly up here and then go to the very top as well, but they would be skipping most of the adventure if they do that. And again, you might have some player characters who might try to do that, especially if they are capable of flying, which they'd still have to deal with some enemies if they try that on the interior, but they end up skipping the majority of the adventure and then just again skipping to the end. Now, as you're getting here, we do have, like I said, level 9, which is going to be mostly hallways. There might be a couple of enemies in these halls, but not a lot. Some of these doors might be unlocked. Most will be locked and have prisoners. The player characters could open them up, but it really depends on what they want to do. But in my opinion, levels 5 through 8 skip by fairly fast as the player characters start to understand what's going on here. Finally, they get to the top, a level 9, which has where all the stairs end up. And the cage here holds Adimarchus, who is imprisoned and basically helpless, and it's impossible to attack him while he's in the cage. If the players think they're going to just simply nerf him while he's in the cage and then get XP for it, or however you're running your game, I would point out that he's helpless. He's not worth anything. It's like stabbing a commoner in a cage. He can't do anything. If he is released, then the player characters will have to fight him if they want to try to disperse him. My group broke the chain and dropped him, hoping that would hurt him and kill him. He didn't die, and I think they just kind of left him there in the cage, but they were satisfied that they cleared out the tower and didn't really deal with him fully. So theoretically, he could come back and haunt Cauldron in my own storyline. Now, there are some different people that are trapped here, some potential adventurers of different levels. This is a very generic table for that. I mean, just higher level adventurers, lower level random adventurers. The important thing is that you get to the top of the adventure, you get this guy, Dark Miracle is probably just pronounced Miracle. He's essentially a cleric of level 18 lich, and he's called a lich fiend or a half fiend lich of Grots. Again, third edition is complete with a lot of these half creatures left and right, and he has some crazy weapons here. This Vorpal Adamantine Scythe, for example. It's cool. It's a keen weapon, which is the thing in third edition. It would be like a legendary weapon, but a really odd one. And he's a good, more or less final boss enemy, but he's not super memorable. But he's there. He can cast spells too. I doubt he's going to use this ridiculous artifact because he can cast spells. See all the spells he has in third edition. There's also this demon flesh golem. It's a huge golem. It's basically a huge flesh golem made from demon flesh, and it's going to be really powerful. I would suggest just taking a flesh golem and beefing it up, making it a lot bigger in fifth edition and much more dangerous, but it's not going to be able to move around a lot because it looks like there's a big space here, but this isn't really very big at all. Each square is 10 feet. This creature is going to take up 15 feet, so he's going to have some trouble moving around. And there's also this pit in the middle, and there's a chance he might just fall into the pit. Now, the way this adventure looks, by the way, when they reach level 10, it seems like it's an open area. It's up to the DM whether you want to have it opened or closed. I noted that player characters could try to jump to the inn if you leave it open, so the DM might want to say that there's a roof. I believe the adventure it does specify a little bit about that, but it's not really clear with a lot of these maps whether or not it's open or not. It seems like it should be open just because of the nature of the adventure, but you could say it's closed to avoid that whole jumping to the end situation. Now, as you're getting further in and the very end of the adventure, the player characters will end up defeating these as more or less the final boss. If they want to fight Adimarchus, they first have to free him from his cage, and it's again very difficult to open, but at their level, they probably should be able to open it one way or another. And in third edition, they do give, well, when they give some images of him in his demonic form, but they do give his stats. They also give him in his angelic form what he looked like. They do give his stats in this edition. If you want your player characters to fight him in third, you're going to have to transfer him to some degree into fifth edition, which might be a little bit of work. I mean, I was just basing him on another demon lord. I have not been able to find any 5e version of him, so it might be a little bit of work to transfer him like that. Or because he was once an angelic creature, you could base him on a solar in fifth edition and just alter his stats accordingly to be more fiend-like effectively. But nonetheless, if they do fight him, he is a great final boss for the campaign, but it's kind of open-ended whether or not they want to, deal with him in the very end, or whether they want to leave him trapped in the cage, or they want to drop the cage in lava, or do some other thing in the very end of the adventure. Now, lastly, as we get to the tail end of things, you get some images here that are kind of neat that were provided. These are different enemies that the player characters fight throughout the Shackled City adventure. You'll notice the half demo down guy from the Test of the Smoking Eye. This is the fire giant from that adventure, for example. There's Orbius Philantru. I don't remember who she is. I think she actually is Lady Riadave. I think this woman was one of the villains. She was like a cleric of Hextor. The player characters fight in one of the early adventures, and then some of these fiends and some other individuals. As I go further into these maps, you get some Shators and Demodans. You get that. I think her name was Gar. She was a Minotaur, high level Minotaur member of the Cage Rights, a Car or Gar, something like that. And you get the different members of the Cage Rights themselves, who, if you want to show some images of them, if you haven't already, this is some great imagery to share with your player characters. And again, the player characters encounter them at different times and all that. In fact, you get their names here of who each one is and all that. Just some nice additional material to finish up the adventure and the campaign. Now, when I finished this campaign, my characters are roughly 15th or 16th level because I ran it in 5th edition. Your players may be in that range. If you're running it in 3rd edition, they're probably 19th or 20th level, just depending on how you're running it. But it doesn't have to be the end of the campaign. It's just more the end of this major storyline. Now, overall, I feel this adventure is a 4-star out of 5 when it comes to its overall rating. It's pretty good. It's mostly a dungeon crawl. It's got a lot of repetitive factors to it, but it makes sense in context with the adventure, in the context of the adventure. And it does provide the opportunity for other locations in Carceri, which the designers, in this case Chris Perkins, didn't have to add, but I'm glad that he did because there are options. But the only problem with it is there are some other locations there that feel very redundant, like fighting Velantru again just seems redundant, where they could have put some other opening threat in that's a little more original. And again, it is a little repetitive in just its design and how it's set up. And there's the chance that the player characters could maybe they don't fly to the top outside, but maybe they go inside and try to just fly to the top of the tower once they can and avoid big chunks of the adventure, which is kind of a flaw in adventure design. It's still a very interesting adventure overall and a great location in Carceri and a high level adventure that makes sense for high level characters, especially considering what kind of location it is and the kind of prisoners that would be kept there. It makes sense for being a lot of demodans there, keeping them in line, and it's got a good setup effectively. Now, guys, if you like my reviews and want to see more of them, please like and subscribe to my videos. I will do a recap of the entire Shackled City campaign arc as well as a capstone to this particular series. And then I will be doing some lesser reviews of single adventures as well, and then perhaps some other adventure campaigns like this. But stay tuned for more content.